Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen. Last week I was talking about and covering how the financial collapse and how terrorist crisis, things of that nature, how they are part of an agenda to bring on the New World Order, and how these things have been written into the protocols as well as other documents which are in connection to the Illuminati and the New World Order, and how the Great Serpent of Zion, how it speaks of this as metaphor for bringing on and entangling the world in the grasp of Satan as the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, the rebel angels, and also the secret societies which are utilized by them in order to bring on this the Great Serpent of Zion as a agenda and as a police state martial law system worldwide. And so this evening we're going to talk with a friend of mine, Liz McGee, and she's going to speak about the two houses of Israel, as well as the prophecies which are connected to the future of America, and the differences between these two bloodlines, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, in connection to our living at the end of days, with the fulfillment of the fig tree, how all of that ties into where we are now and what we are seeing unfolding, and how this really has been, not only biblically, but as far as these other conspiratorial texts, they've been predicted hundreds of years, thousands of years in advance even. So, Liz, are you there?
Well, I am, Zen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I am on Skype. It did come up, so I guess if this sounds okay, we can do it this way, or you can,
it would be better to do it by Skype. So let me drag you in using it, and then you can hang up your cell phone.
Okay.
So just wait till it connects. It'll sound a lot better in the archive, and there won't be any feedback. Like on your cell phone, I can hear the air around you, things of that nature. All right, hang up your cell phone. Okay. All right. You there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, much better. All right, so before we begin and go into the different aspects of what you're going to be speaking about this evening, why don't you give people your website, contact information, where you do your YouTube videos, and then we'll begin.
Okay. Well, I have a YouTube channel, just my name, Liz McGee, and you could just Google or in YouTube put the name in, and my channel is called Prophecy for the Last Hour. And I have about now about 70 videos loaded. So I've sort of been tracking with you a little bit, and people, these are exciting times. So it's full of information about the last days and Bible prophecy. And then I'm an artist and I have a website, but that's probably not germane to this tonight.
Well, I think you do excellent art, and so it wouldn't hurt to mention where people can go to see it. Might as well put that out there as well.
All right. Well, thank you. I just you could again Google it's www.lisbethmcgee. My actual name is Liz Beth. It's kind of just putting the two together. So it's lisbethmcgee.com for my art. And you could also find me on Facebook. I have a page called Liz McGee Watercolors.
Okay, excellent. Well, why don't you first comment on what I had, opened the show with, and then kind of set the foundation for where we're going to be going this evening with what you want to talk about.
All right. Well, I was listening to your show last week, and oh gosh, my brain now, I can't remember what the title was, the one you had just loaded up, and you were talking like you said, but I have this perspective on, I call Hebraic, biblical perspective on the two houses of Israel. And to me, unless people really understand that piece of the puzzle, it's very hard to kind of figure out who is who, the players, and how prophecy fits. So there was something you had mentioned, and because when you're tracking the tares, which is like a lot of what you just said, I think we're all beginning to understand these Luciferians, these tares, and the different disguises or ways they infiltrate everything.
Right.
How they have really infiltrated, and to a large extent how the Bible identifies them, and especially in terms of the two houses of Israel.
Yeah, this is something I think is very important because, because I've covered this topic, maybe not in the way that you have, but um, having written my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, talking about the differentiation between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and how that differentiation goes back to the parable of the garden, and what even in that show I talked about the Rechabites and how they were linked to those which are now linked to the scribes and Pharisees, but that Joshua had spared, and they infiltrated into the people Israel kind of through that backdoor measure, through deception, and how they have now asserted themselves upon all the thrones of the world, the various presidents, prime ministers, the different, the authority worldwide as far as government, political, religious, and even monetarily. And unless people know who they are, we won't really understand what is going on in the world, nor how to make sense of of all of the current events and the underlying conspiracy side of it. Because unless you can piece that together, and make sense of the propaganda of mainstream news, it just all seems like a random mishmash of just different topics. But there is a whole covert agenda to all of these things.
Well, that is the ultimate understatement. And I think my emphasis too on this, as we see the Luciferians and we begin to really understand how they have kept the prison planet, us and the planet, so to speak, under a dominion, or as the god of this world, how Satan has truly created this whole matrix. How, like America, let's just start, because I know, I think one of the things that we're talking about was like the Apostle Paul. We were going to talk about two other in this category. The Apostle Paul, he's under a lot of fire tonight, these days. the Torah and the role of the Torah in believers, and then moving from there, how they infiltrate so much to control the thoughts and minds and the religion, quote unquote, that we practice, that we don't even realize. Most Christians don't even realize it. So much of the truth has been hijacked.
Yeah, very true.
But if you wanted to, because we had this kind of, because some of the things you touched on last week, like the Apostle Paul, I wanted to make some comments about that.
Yeah, we'll do that, but first, why don't you set the foundation as far as talking the two different houses of Israel, who they
Okay.
are, their
Okay.
links to the different peoples worldwide, and so that we can make sense of where you're going to be going with this topic.
Right. See, people. Okay, I look at this thing then, and I know that there are many ages, but the age that we're in and dealing with is this 6,000 year Adamic age.
Right.
And if you and I, when you start reading again all the extra biblical books and all the texts that are out there, I mean, it's amazing the information that you can have, but you can piece it together. So most people think that the whole Bible story and the whole Hebrew Jewish thing kind of started with Moses. But see, that, that's not really true. You had the whole time from Adam to Abraham. And so many people today are unpacking, like with Nimrod and with Genesis 6 and the Watch Your Angels, and so much more information about what was really going on in the days of Noah. So there's this whole huge unpacking of information that's going on about what it was really like from Adam to Abraham. And this is where in our Bible, we really get one or two chapters on 2,300 years of history. I mean, to me, a logical thinking person could say, you cannot deduce the full picture from that. Right. But anyway, when Abraham, what God did with Abraham, I don't think we really understand. And from Abraham, you immediately morph into Isaac, and then you go into the 12 tribes. And then you go into this nation, which is a whole different, in my opinion, strategy, because I feel we're in a war. And Yahweh uses different strategies for different tactics. So when God called out, because we know, this is where you and I, Zen, are totally on the same page. I totally understand the seed line, the infiltration into the genetics of man by the serpentine race, and who knows? I mean, goodness gracious. At this point, there's so much hibernization as it was in the days of Noah. So that understanding you have to have. So you have to understand why God, why a pure bloodline is even important. It's not racist. This is something I so try to stress to people, because our war, when Paul says, it's not against flesh and blood, we don't even get it. It's not against flesh and blood. It is against other living souls. This is what the Bible calls them in Genesis, other species that are at war with us. Okay? And we have got to get this. So it's principalities, it's powers, it's spiritual wickedness. These are real, and many of them, in senses, they're boots on the ground. And this is where we get into the tares and the Luciferians and all this kind of thing. But to get to, you have to understand, because one of my biggest pet peeves is Satan, because he has really robbed us of this. We immediately think it's racist and it's elitist. Those are the two things that God is not. So when I'm talking about a pure bloodline, it has nothing to do with this racist concept of how Satan always spins it. The pure bloodline is Adamic bloodline. Okay, let's just, okay. So if you understand that that's really what is at stake here. And when he called out Abraham, and when he worked with Abraham, and when he had Sarah, and when they had Isaac, he was back to having, again, a pure bloodline, because what we know now, an Adamic bloodline, what we know now that Nimrod already, and this is all happening within 300 to 400 years after the flood, totally hibernized, again, much of mankind, to the point where, and this is why I love the story of Abraham, because he's so much like us today. His dad is the high general in Nimrod's army, a complete pagan worshiper, and then he's got his uncle and his grandfather from the righteous seed line, Shem and Noah. I mean, talk about, growing up in a dysfunctional, situation.
Right.
But Abraham, we know now he made a choice for the true God. He figured it out, and he put himself out there before Yahweh and said, "No, you are my God, and and God did. I really believe these things are supernatural. God really gave him back through a pure Adamic bloodline. Now, this is how I see it, because when you get into the mark of the beast and this whole idea, but by the time you get to the 12 tribes, I believe that what God was doing, instead of working through a righteous bloodline, through our patriarchs, all the way up, and then Shem and Noah after the flood, because Ham and Japheth went off and they just did their own thing. I mean, you know the whole story. I mean, I don't have to tell your listeners. They're very educated people. When all the ites came on the scene and the Canaanites, we know how the giants, again, were in the earth in that day. But he got himself back to, through Abraham, another Adamic line, and then morphing it out with Jacob, with the 12 tribes, another Adamic line of people on the planet. And he made a nation. He made a whole nation, so it was a numbers game now. And this is where we begin to have, and this has taken me years, because I want to interject this. And if I'm talking too fast, or you just have to tell me, I have my major emphasis that I feel the Holy Spirit and I did is on the parabolic language. I really believe, and this has been confirmed by anyone who is a Hebraic scholar, understands that there's a thing in Hebrew exegesis called pards, which is 4 levels of scriptural understanding. Every scripture verse has 4 levels. And the final level, the 4th level, is a hidden, esoteric, you could even say occultic understanding. And that's the oral Torah. That's the understanding that God gave to the priests and the high priest, to the scribes. They were supposed to understand and keep the storyline straight. And by the time you get to Daniel, and the people were again getting, this is why, intermarrying, getting so, again, lost out there in the Gentile world, losing their identity. And this is why he told Daniel, don't worry, but just seal it. Just keep these words, just keep it. And I will, in our day, he's pouring it out again. And with Jesus' time, he poured out again the understanding, the spiritual revelation, the spiritual of what the realities these words mean. So parabolic language is a huge part of the Bible. It's called a mystery. In 1 Corinthians 13, verse 2, Paul even says, even though I understand all mysteries and all prophecy and have not love, what profit? But the point is, they're out there. All prophecy and all mysteries is the part of Bible exegesis. And that's, to me, what the elect of these days, we're supposed to be all about, trying to figure this out. That being said, you had now these two, again, a whole hybridized world of which became of Nimrod through this whole thing, because he was a king in the earth, as big as they get. And this is why I love the book of Jasher and a lot of these other books. And I love that book, The Writings of Abraham. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that. That has
isn't that fascinating?
Unbelievable, the information in there.
Right.
And it just sees. So the whole point of the nation of Israel is that this was a group on the planet of Adamic people who were going to keep the storyline straight. I don't think people understand then, and pretty soon they are, because, with what's going to happen if it happens this September, when the abyss opens up and the sky and the moon and the stars and everything fall down, and that's a parabolic understanding. I mean, it's going to be out in the open again. I mean, so pretty soon we're not going to sound so crazy, because it's going to be in people's face. But to give a heads up, so this whole part of it, but what the 12 tribes, then what happened, their history, they didn't, it's a war, it's a battlefield, it's a mess. But the 2 houses of Israel, they were once 12 tribes. They had a whole plot of land. And it was so geographically bigger than they even tell us. I mean, this is a world empire. They have found coins of David's dynasty here in America, all over the world.
Right.
It's a worldwide empire. But the thing is, as saying, relentless attack, and then this is the whole point with under Solomon, when the nation split and had a civil war. And after Solomon, the nation divided, and you had two, this is why I call the two houses. See, people got to know their Bible history. They became totally separate nations with their own governments, their own kings, their own religions, their own prophets, everything. I mean, I don't think people understand how separate they became. And we're at war with each other in much of the Old Testament. You can see this. So that, then what happened to them? So the Jews that are over there in the land of Israel today, technically, these people, by and large, Judah is the tribe of Judah, and Levites and Benjamites that have stuck it out. This is the southern kingdom. Now, I know there's a lot of infiltration. You got the whole, Jews that say they're Jews, they're not, synagogue of Satan, the Zionists. I mean,
Right.
I'm not saying, but by and large, and this is what Paul said, he said, my people, Hebrew of the Hebrews, he was of this he was a Benjamite. So when he's saying that these people have kept the covenants, they've kept the writings, they kept it. So we owe them a huge debt. But today in the land, by and large, and I know a lot of people are going back and but by and large, that, because they had the scepter, because Judah, and Paul, it's prophetic, because Judah got the scepter blessing of the firstborn, the kingship, and they kept it. The other 10 tribes, that's a huge body of people. We don't understand how many millions of people were in that body of people when the Assyrians came in northern, and this is the whole, at like 200 years after Solomon split, it did not take them very long to apostatize. You can see America apostatizing, in 50 to 100 years. It's not hard to imagine. And they got so apostatized that God, basically said, that's it. Now, what he did, he divorced them. And this is where so much of the language of the Bible we don't understand, and you got to understand, you really got to understand Jewish divorce laws and the whole bit. He said, that's it. I'm done with you people. You're not going to follow me. You're not going to follow the program. You're just going to do your own thing. So fine, go out there. He dispersed them to the nations. This is the seed that was sown. This northern kingdom is known in your Bible, in your Old Testament, especially starting with the prophets, and this is the age of the prophets, as the house of Israel, the house of Joseph, the house of Ephraim. This is the northern kingdom. This is Samaria. This is all the different ways the prophets describe this demographic group of people. And there's so many people unpacking this today, again, tracking their genealogies, where they went. And this is another fascinating story. And I was going to do a rabbit trail. I won't. So, but this group of people were dispersed to the nations, their genetics, and this now in hindsight is a brilliant plan. Then this tells me, this is the best story when people understand how God, when he says that all things work together for good, he's not kidding. No, our Yahweh is so unbelievable and so zillions of steps ahead of us that seed now is in everybody. This is why Abraham's seed, he said, I'm going to make you a great nation, and your seed is going to go off into all the earth. Well, he wasn't kidding. And for a purpose. Oh my gosh. So but these peoples and this group, they did go everywhere. Now, there have been dispersions. What people need to understand, even in Moses' time, I think you can read in the Sugrat what his brother-in-law took off and went at one point. The tribe of Dan took off and went a lot during this. I mean, all through, even before Jacob, during Isaac's time, some of these families went off, and this is coming out, and we're unpacking some of it. But there have been a lot of other dispersions, but the major one, the two, even the house of Judah, the southern kingdom, when they were disciplined by the Lord, they went to Babylon, but only for 70 years, or actually technically, I believe 66 and a half years, they came back to the land. They've never lost their national identity. Unfortunately, the northern kingdom lost their identity But if you read the prophecies in light of this, especially in Hosea, where he talks about he would woo them, he would remarry them, he would enter again into covenant with them, and this time they would go from calling him master to calling him husband. So the New Testament Christian, to a large extent, are Ephraimite lost sheep. This is what Jesus said when he said, I have come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because in the restoration of all, he had to get his people back. So now, and this was always the plan, but to understand so much of the Bible prophecies, like America, we're not Babylon. This is the thing. We have tons of Babylon in us. Wherever there are tares, there is Babylon. I mean, it's just, and there's a lot of tares here. There's a lot of Babylon, but we technically, and this will be my last whole little piece of this. When you understand, and I think you do, Zen, especially when you read the writings of Abraham, the importance of the firstborn, and how Noah was a firstborn, Shem was a firstborn. Jesus is the ultimate firstborn, and along with that, the priesthood. When God separated the birthright blessing that he gave to Abraham, and then it went to Isaac, but when it went to Jacob, or actually when it went to the 12 kids, it was split up, because actually, with 12 kids, you can't give each one a piece of the birthright. So actually, he split it up between Judah got the scepter, and they have Hebrew words, the barakah, and Ephraim, who actually, and that's the whole story you have to understand, Ephraim is actually the youngest son of Joseph, who actually had an Egyptian mother, an Egyptian pagan mother. It's so interesting. So you can never call God racist. You can never call him, he is so not looking at the outward physical at all.
Let me make one comment here real quick, because we're almost to the first break. But if you have never read the story of Joseph and Asenath, how he took his bride and how she renounced paganism,
right.
It is one of the most incredible love stories and most beautiful extra biblical, extra canonical texts. I would definitely recommend people read it. All right, we'll be right back. Hold on, just. All right, welcome back, everybody. For those that may want to at another time read the story that I was talking about, Joseph and Asenath, I did
to receive this.
I did post it in the chat room, and so but I wanted to really quick read a passage from the book of Enoch, because it says in chapter 1 verse 2, from them I heard all things and understood what I saw, that which will not take place in this generation, but in a generation which is to succeed at a distant period, on account of the elect. So even the book of Enoch, he speaks about, was written for a later generation at a time far into the future, and that much of what is in Scripture has been written for a distant generation, and that when we saw the blooming of the fig tree, even Yeshua mentions this in Mark 13, Matthew 24, and Luke 21. He spoke about when you saw the blooming of the fig tree, the restoration of the nation of Israel, that would be the generation which saw the fulfillment of all things, of the prophetic word. And so that brings us to where we are now. And that's why I believe the things that I talk about, and which Liz is speaking about this evening, are all coming to light. And so much of what she's saying and speaking about has been long hidden, and little understood. And so, the Spirit is being poured out on all flesh. And so I'm also going to post a link to the show that she and I did previous to this one a few months back. And if you're interested, you can listen to that as well to give you more background on what we're speaking about this evening. Liz, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And
Okay, thank you, Zen. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I love that verse in Enoch, and I believe that that's us, the elect of the last generation. And I do believe he is pouring out the Spirit on all flesh. It's free. Anybody who wants to can. It's like a banquet. He talks about he's going to put, a huge banquet on a high mountain, and you can just come and lavish on it, which I consider to be the availability of so much of the Word of God today from so many generations and times and eras. Just to say, in like even the writings of Abraham, I mean, so many. This is a whole side discussion, but so many of these texts that are coming back, I'm like, what were these people holding on to these all these centuries for? It's
Right.
really fascinating. I mean, this is a fascinating story. Oh my gosh. But just a quick wrap up on this whole thing, because this is my point, Zen, that people just need to understand, because we are not Gentile Christians. Okay, well, I mean, yes, that is a term that the world has for us. But from God's point of view, spiritually, we are in an administration now where he has, since Yeshua, okay, in the last 2 days, because, the parabolic also we're in a 6-day thing, or 6,000 years. So we've been in the last 2 days, which in Hebraic understanding they call the era of the Messiah. So we are in the time, which is, well, I won't even go down that rabbit trail, but he has been wooing back to himself all of, not only those of the seed of the northern kingdom who were dispersed, who can now come back to an understanding of Yahweh and his righteousness. And this is where it gets into, we'll get into Paul, and anybody, and the Gentiles, and how the door was flown wide open. And that's the piece of it. So if you don't understand the players, you have the house of Judah, which remained with a national identity, which is now basically the nation that is in the land over there. Okay. The other 10, this is the fascinating part. They were dispersed, and this is what people are unpacking, that basically the northern kingdom, because these are clanal, tribal people who migrate as a clan. And I think even Zen, you understanding now the Thracians. Now that's a whole huge
Right.
chunk of these people groups, because the thing is, names get changed constantly. And this is, I think, one of Satan's major moves to confuse everybody, that every conquering culture renames the countries and the people, everything, so it gets very confusing after 6,000 years of this. But either way, so the northern kingdom migrated truly through the Balkans. And you see, this is why Turkey has so much true history in the Balkan area, because Shem and we're in, that area of Turkey outside of Mount Ararat. They came up through into Greece, into Italy, into Spain, up into northern France, up into the islands of the sea. When the Bible talks about the islands of the sea, it is talking geographically about England and Ireland and Wales. It's talking about islands like Australia. It's talking about because they really did disperse into far out areas like South Africa, but the bulk of them went to the islands of the sea, which is why there is this predominant group of early Christians that, kind of why Northern Europe and Western Europe Christianity mushroomed up so huge originally, because they had the biggest bulk of these lost sheep who had literally married and integrated themselves genetically into all the nations that were already indigenous there. So, but then as the thing has progressed over 2,000 years, you have had huge inroads into much like a lot of Japheth's people groups and a lot of Ham's people groups. I mean, God, and this is what people have to understand. God has used this dispersed seed, and as he's gone after them, he has been able to get everybody else who wants to get on board. I mean, to me, it's a brilliant plan, and it's been working. The point, like you were saying, the fig tree has to understand, that is Israel, because when Moses, and this is why we have to understand who Israel. Israel is a word for ultimately all those in see, all right, all those who want to make Yeshua their Lord and Savior, and Yahweh the high God. Okay, because we know there's a lot of other gods out there, a lot of other things you can attach yourselves to. But for Israel is mine, even my firstborn. That's what Yahweh says. So this is his, these are his children. These are his direct genetic. That's what the new birth is. This is the whole point. I mean, I don't understand how people don't get genetically, he has seed, his literal kids, offspring are this group of people on the planet called Israel. Now, when it says in, I think it's in Jeremiah, where he will raise an ensign on the nations, and I think this is why this September, if this all pops, oh my gosh, this is going to be unbelievable. Two people groups are going to merge on the planet because you're going to have Israel. The Gentile Christians have got to understand we're not separate. We're in two houses, because see, most of the prophecies are either directed towards the house of Judah or just the house of Israel. But you got to know what happened to the house of Israel, where they went. God never, from his point, he knew where they were and he knew what they were doing. People need to read the book of Hosea from this point of view, because it's so clear when he's talking about Ephraim and, oh my gosh, you went out there and you just totally mingled with the Gentiles, and you just became, you became the Gentiles. That's what Paul said. So when Paul had to go after the Gentiles, that's what he had to do. So that whole piece of the puzzle. But now, as we're coming together, and so many Messianic Jews are coming in, so we're all kind of getting into a group think here in a good way, and we're understanding this thing. But if you don't understand the two houses, you cannot understand Bible prophecy, because the house of Ephraim, when God gave the birthright to Ephraim, he gave the firstborn to Ephraim and to Manasseh, but Ephraim became the firstborn. That part of the blessing was a blessing of material wealth and national superior, and not national superior, how do I say this, military superiority, like that was like, so Judah had the kingship. They were always going to have a line of kings. The Levites had the priesthood, but Joseph carried with him an eternal blessing of abundance. So people wonder why America, and this is where there's a governmental aspect to this blessing, where so this is what Joseph represents. When God increased the nation, or he stored up all this grain, and it's so prophetic, all this grain and wealth, and Joseph had to administer it. We represent the governmental, in its best case scenario, not like we've ever done it well. We've had total entitlement. We don't even know what we're doing. We don't even understand that we're fulfilling Yahweh's plans to bless the nations half the time. Our breadbasket, our prosperity, none of this stuff was for us. It was to fulfill Bible prophecy when he said, I will bless you. He wasn't kidding. He blessed. I mean, Britain was a lot of nations, but no nation in the history of the world has ever been blessed like America. And in my mind, so that's done. God fulfilled his promises. He blessed the righteous remnant seed of these people as they went out and they came back to him. Now, America, we need to understand who we are. And as we join with our brothers, because when it's go time, I said, when Satan comes out with all his hordes, I mean, when he's, oh my gosh, you see it, the battle lines are being drawn. We will rise up. This is Yahweh. We are his army. We are the people that he's going to use. And we're not two different we have to see this thing spiritually. We are the children of Yahweh to administer blessing and justice and mercy and righteousness and justice against wickedness. Now that's part of the puzzle. Unfortunately, we've been as dogged by, as you can be by terrors, and we've been as blind as any other, when Jesus came, when he came to his own people, when he came to Judah at the time. I mean, really, we've got nothing but grace. And if we don't kind of get with it and repent and ask for forgiveness and come under the blood and get, but it will happen. I have no doubts. So to me, you just have to really understand this thing from that perspective. Otherwise, Bible prophets, you can't fit Gog and, they just pull stuff out of the woodwork like Gog and Magog and stuff, and they have no context for these things. Now that's my opinion, but that's based on, a lot of Bible research and a lot of talking with, the Holy Spirit about this stuff. So you can comment on all that.
Well, I want you to go into, since we are speaking about prophecies, I want you to talk about the the differentiation of the two houses. They're coming together and how that ties in
Okay.
with Bible prophecy.
Okay.
As well as you had been mentioning of events that are possibly lined for this September, because there seems to
Right.
be a lot of signs pointing to September as a possible
Right.
window for a lot of unfolding. So,
Right. I know that's a whole show in itself. But see, I think that Bible prophecy, I do not believe America is Babylon. Okay. I believe that there's a verse that talks about in Revelation about the remnant who will be carried out on the wings of a great eagle and brought to a place prepared for her in the desert. See, I believe that's America. Our founding fathers then, this is, I'll tell you something, there's been two people groups on the planet, maybe more now as we unwrap the Thracians and some different peoples, but who have truly made their nation based on Yahweh's precepts, statutes, laws, and guidance. Israel at the time under Moses, and the founding fathers, see the pilgrims, what people don't understand, because we got our history, so there was a period from about, I don't know when they first came out, 1690 to about 1740. There was the pilgrims that were here in New England, seriously, they really did, they knew their Bible. These people were so biblically literate, and they did really set up the foundation, the laws that for a just society. See, one of the things, even the Mayflower Compact was kind of drafted and written up, even though I know many people were not part of their Christian little sect, but they were able to draft up how we live together in justice and in peace and in civility, and so America, I believe that if Israel gets invaded, in real time, seriously, what could happen? There's any number of matches that quote unquote could light on fire. When that happens, it talks, I believe, about a remnant. The righteous remnant there are going to have to get out, because prophetically it's going to get pretty raised until the crucible that Judah will have to go through to recognize and to call upon the name of the Lord is pretty heavy. That the remnant that will get out, I believe that they will come to America. This is where we need to understand that is our role. That is the primary role. That's what Abraham did when he went and got Lot. It is the role, it is the responsibility, it is of the firstborn who has the part of the birthright where you are the protector, you have the provision. You have the provision to have armies, do these things. It's your job to I don't want to say be the policeman, but it's your job to protect your clans. This is not, and I know I'm not trying to, I'm trying to keep this thing on a much more elevated level. I know people like to get really into the fight on a much more elevated, but when Israel is surrounded, they're going to come here. We're the place in the desert. These people knew. That's why they called us the New Jerusalem. That's why they said we were a city on a hill. That's why they had this whole concept of, many of these people really got it, that this was a breadbasket for the world, that this was an unbelievable, uncharted gift, because he said he would give them another, and if people work their Hebrew really closely, when it's like, he said to David, he said, I'm going to give you another land, not the land in Israel, it's in way down the road. It's the same word that Eve used when she got Seth. She said, I've got another in place of. You know, we know that Abel died. Well, she got another son. Well, Israel got taken away. They were going to get another place. There are more Jews and Christians, two house people living together in this nation than anywhere else in the world. There's actually more. There's no other place in the world where you have Christians and Jews living together than in this country. And we need to understand this thing, because bottom line, you're either going to, you know, you pick your daddy. You're going to make Yahweh your daddy, or you're going to make Satan, and, you know, pick your side. And see, I believe these next, and if it starts in September, that, you know, I don't believe in a 7 years. I don't believe in any of that kind of stuff. I don't believe in so much of the popular culture prophecy stuff. But I believe it's at the time, the tribulation, of so much pressure being put on the harvest. They have to decide. There's more people that live today than have ever lived in all of the time. People have to decide where they want to spend eternity. And it's going to be like the fire heated up to the point that tomorrow is not going to be a given. You know, you don't have 70 years or a whole lifetime to decide, oh, do I want to believe in God or not? You know, it's going to be crazy, and you're going to have to make a decision, and that's all by Yahweh's plan, because it's a harvest. It's done. You better get in the barn, or get, you know, if you're still standing in the field, you're going to be taken. And I don't think that's a rapture. So this is an important time, but we are going to be, I truly believe, the house of Judah. When we come together, we will have God's blessing to be a place of refuge. See, if we can kick these tares out, what we got to do is then we got to take back our country, but not as, you know, oh my gosh, neo-conservative Republicans or whatever. We've got to take it back as truly Yahweh's children, understanding he's given us this and he will protect us, he will provide, and we will be a place of refuge in the time of this insane chaos. We are not Babylon. I wish people would read their Bible. Babylon represents not only the system, but truly, if it is true that it's more of a Muslim, and I think you can make this case now, the real conflagration, so to speak, will be, because Satan, you know, he always makes the two sides and then makes them come at each other. You will have, you know, Zionist Israel against Islamic fundamentalism, and then they probably will really be the match that just lights the whole thing on fire. But to me, that's the way I see it. So I see great hope, and I see the verses. And when you understand the parabolic language, this is all couched parabolically, much of it. But when Paul talks about the time of the Gentiles, he's talking about a 2-day window that he saw, which means 2,000 years, to go and get not only the lost sheep, but any Gentile. And then we got to unpack that, and we got to begin to understand why the Bible uses these words and what this means. Anyone else who wants to come in, and then we're one new man. This is the whole point. You're neither not Jew nor Gentile. It doesn't matter. We are the children of Yahweh. We are the host, the armies of the Lord.
Hey, there's a question from chat room from Watcher Ruth. She wants to know what you think as far as Babylon, whether it's a place or a heart issue.
Well, that's a good question. And was that it? I didn't mean to jump in. Was that?
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, see, that's a good question. And this leads me to another point. I did want to talk about something that I just really helped me, tautology, but it's all where you put your commas. Now, the Bible, we know, was originally written in Hebraic as a stream of consciousness with no commas and no chapters, no verses, no vowels. It was just a written stream. But so where do you put your commas? You could say, I will show you a mystery, comma, Babylon the Great, or I could show you mystery Babylon, comma, that great. See, these things make huge differences where the emphasis is placed. But I do think that Babylon is a heart issue. But
hold on, Liz. We'll pick it up on the other side. I'll let her answer in full, and then I will answer as well, Ruth. We'll be right back, all. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen, and I have as guest with me this evening Liz McGee. Before we pick up on the topics that we're talking about, I just want to remind everybody that Revolution Radio is the largest listener-supported commercial-free and corporate-free radio network on the planet and on the internet. And that in order for us to continue coming to you in the way that we do, covering all of the issues, topics, and current events in the way that we do, through a wide array and variety of perspectives and opinions on studios A and B, that we do need your monetary support. And those of you that can afford to, please do go to freedomslips.com, click on the donate button, and either purchase one of the items that is available for barter for the money that you may donate, or just simply donate out of the kindness of your heart. But if not, you can also buy access to the archives and download in MP3 format all the shows done by all of the hosts going back to the beginning of the year, and in many cases, you can download even up until the beginning of last year. And so there's a lot of archives, a lot of information there. It would give you a chance to listen to others that you may not otherwise have. Maybe they come on too late for you, or come on at a time when you're working or doing some other endeavor which does not allow you to join us here on in chat and join in the discourse and the fellowship. And just know that we appreciate your support and all of the kind fellowship that you share with all of us. And we just appreciate you as a listening audience. And we love servicing you in the way that we do. And so um, go to freedomslips.com, click on the donate button, and support us if you can. All right, there's the couple questions from the chat room and a couple comments that I wanted to read. Truthy1 says that the USA is one of the whores of Babylon, and then I believe it was Hippie Chick that asked, some people think the U.S. is Mystery Babylon because it's not mentioned in the Bible as the U.S. What do you think? It's my opinion that there is a judgment that pertains to New York as the seat of world government, and that the kings that put forth the agenda for the New World Order. But you have to also differentiate between the people and the government, and it's the same thing with Israel, because the people that the synagogue of Satan, those that say they are Jews but are not, but that were instrumental in that are Talmudic Jews and that do not follow the Torah and do not, that do not believe that Yeshua is Savior Messiah. It's the same kind of thing. The governments of all the world, even though we have this whole facade of, we're against you or they're against a specific people or specific government, or they're all working together in tangent to pull, um, basically pull the whole protocols of the learned elders of Zion, the global dominance and the manifestation of world government, so that they can bring forth the Antichrist and unite the world under one religion, one government, one. All of those things are um, being done through controlled opposition. Even with the whole letter outlining 3 global wars that Albert Pike sent to Giuseppe Mazzini in 1871, it spoke about the need to foment 3 global wars as a pretext to bring forth this United Nations. And so there's a difference between the people and the governments and those that are controlling from behind the scenes, because they are aligned with the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, and they were the ones that even in Yeshua's day conspired against him, and that resulted in his murder. Same difference here in America. We have both the people representing the sons of Adam, the children of Abraham, and then you have the leadership representing the tares, the wheat and the tares. And so that's my opinion. Let me give Liz a chance to comment here, and then we'll continue on.
Right. And then, I mean, I think that people are beginning again to get eyes wide open to understand this war we're in. You know, tears is one of the best overall arching phrases for this. But one of my things is people, there are still more of God's people than there are of the tares. And what I think is we tend now Satan, because especially the media, I mean, he just is just strutting around. He's so big and bad and everything he's going to do. Everybody's like just so enamored with all the big bad things that Satan thinks he's going to do. But we're not focused on what Yahweh's going to do because we win. I mean, for some reason, people just all of a sudden think they're going to flip a channel. Oh, we won and Yahweh's here. And, you know, I mean, I don't think they think of the process. We win in this battle. Good does triumph over evil. There is a day when the wicked get removed out of me, and it is by the Yahushua at the head of his armies, the elect. But even, you know, like from Enoch, now if you read Enoch, he was a preacher of righteousness, and you read some of the texts, and he turned the whole world back to God for a season. Shem, I mean, some of these were able to turn. Noah were able to turn. I know. See, I guess the thing is,
Josiah.
Yes, there were many. I guess the thing is, it says, you know, how does it go? The seed of the woman, seed of the serpent, you know, you will bruise his head. He will. To me, the way I look at that is sort of a Hebraic idiom. Sometimes they'll be up. Sometimes you're going to be up. I mean, that's kind of really the Hebraic idiom, in my opinion, of what that really means.
You know, that also goes along with that. The Dead Sea Scroll, the wars of the sons of light and the sons of darkness.
Right.
Because it's a
Right.
back and forth battle for 7.
It's a back and forth battle.
Yeah.
So we need to start focusing. I'm like really done with. I mean, let's just get September over with. I say, like, game on, bring it on. Those who know their God will be strong and do exploits. I mean, I'm not really. I'm kind of done. I've kind of figured, you know, to a certain extent, figured out we're not ignorant of Satan's devices, but I think we need to kind of refocus now and look at the prophecies and find our promises. See, okay, so back to Babylon, that question, let me just say, see, when you study this out, Babylon is a code word. It represents something, but what does it represent? Egypt, and this is something that I've really begun to understand, Zen, and it's helped me a lot. We are triune beings. We are a body, a soul, and a spirit. And a lot of Bible verses, you know, is it talking about the body? Is it talking about the soul? What's it talking about? Egypt is sort of, when they were in bondage in Egypt, that was, because a lot of in the Hebraic things, the journey is you got to come out of Egypt and you got to come out of Babylon, and then you got to cross the Jordan. Okay, that's sort of in a geographic, that's the journey. Okay, but you've got to bodily come out and of Egypt, which is an oppressive, because it represents the fact that they oppressed the people physically, bodily, made them slaves, okay, and took away all their rights and freedoms and everything. Then in Babylon, and this is where it's a deeper and it's an even more insidious and it's an even more hidden bondage, because it's more in the soul category, what they were doing. I mean, some of this stuff, like when you had on Carolyn Hamill and the other gentleman, escapes my mind. Dave, I mean, wonderful people. But, you know, just listening to her stories, but Babylon merchandising souls. I mean, we got to start to understand this stuff. You know, we're really nothing but the most sophisticated computer programs that anybody could ever devise. Our soul is so sophisticated, but the point is Lucifer knows he is able to totally infiltrate our soul and hibernize our soul and do things in our soul category that is so much even more, you know, what to say, the body is going to die and decompose, you know. Don't worry about those that kill the body. Worry about those that, you know, that could put soul and body into hell. So Babylon, to me, now Babylon has geographic headquarters, like you just said. See, the thing is America, but then you gotta understand, the tares did not found us. I do not believe that in the beginning. I do believe that God sent good wheat here in the very beginning. I do believe that the people groups that came here, for the most part, the pilgrims and some of these really were on a vision and a mission from God to begin to stake out the other land. I can't stress that prophecy. That's a whole teaching in and of itself, because God knew the way world history was going to be. There had to be a place, and there had to be a place for Him to bless His remnant. You know, He promises, but. So we can't always be focused on the tares. They're here and they grow together. I mean, this is the point. We're all one big mix in this field, because the seed was sown in the field, which represents on the earth. We're these things that are growing, and we're growing together, wheat and tares. But the end times, like I was saying before, is going to be such a crucible that it's going to separate the wheat and the tares, where it is going to be you're going to be able to separate. There is going to be a separation now. So in Babylon, governmentally, I mean, I do believe that the original, and I know the founders, some were Masons and all this kind of thing, but I think, again, God, I don't think all of them were Luciferian child sacrificing, some of these dark. I think that many of these people were just deceived and just clueless. Most of this is what Paul says, the blindness that is on both houses is something we have to begin to understand. We're as blind as anybody. We keep picking on the Jews, Judah, for being blind to the Messiah. Well, we need to start looking at our own blindness. Pull the mote out of your own eye, or the beam out of your own eye. But see, when I look at the prophecies, as we come together and understand, because one of the things that Moses said when he went to Pharaoh and he said, on authority Yahweh, the Most High God, and Pharaoh, see, these people were not stupid. They knew who he was talking about, the Most High God. You're to let God's people go. And Pharaoh, because he thought he was so big and bad, it's like, no, come on, I ain't going to do that. But after a series of confrontations, he did. But the point is, we're at that place again where we need to come out of Babylon. People need to understand and that's why I can't wait for Enoch. And I believe the witnesses will be Enoch and Elijah. I literally believe these people. I don't know how it's all going to play out. I do believe in Enoch and Elijah, a leadership for us at our time. We have a lot of, and much of it has been stolen too, because when you read so much of the Pseudegraphia and write so many of these other works, and you realize how deeply spiritual, how deeply provided for, and how deeply entrenched in culture that our people were, our patriarchs. That's why I love the writings of Abraham, because it really gives an understanding and a separation of not living a totally separate from the world. There have been times where we have done it very well. Unfortunately, we're not in that season right now, but it's our own fault, Zen, because, we totally fell asleep at the switch. We let our blessings become our snare, and began loving the world, and just like Israel. So anyway, so I believe that Babylon, but I also believe that geographically, the city of Babylon, you go back to Babylon, you go back to Nineveh, you go back to the cities of the plain, you go back to the land of Nod, you go back to the Canaanites, you go back, that area geographically is and by the sea of, the Reed Sea, down there at the bottom of the Gulf of, by Iraq at the bottom, I can't remember what the name of that is. That geographically, there are some portals there. I mean, I do believe in this whole concept that there are definitely places that it's much easier for demon or let's say otherworldly supernatural interface. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree with that. But if you look at what it says about Mystery Babylon, about it, there being the economic power of the world, that's
Yeah, but
America.
it wasn't. Yeah, but we could lose it. Look at Tyre. It once was the king of Tyre. He was once that was once the New York City of the world. Just because it's here, and the other thing is, God judged Tyre. I mean, actually, Tyre is actually under the sand. They're in so much of a lot of these old cultures, like just like God said, I'm going to lower you so low, you're never even going to. Like Babylon in the last days will be raised so low, she will never be inhabited again.
Right.
So yes, is it geographic? But is it geographic to the tares? They have territory in this world, obviously, right? But so do we. Okay, and that's one of the whole principles too behind private property. If you read your Torah, the whole point is this is why it is a big deal. That you have sovereignty to a certain extent. You have private property. You have areas. Yeah, I mean, this is why these concepts are very important. But and why you would pray over an area, why you need to cover your house in the blood of Jesus and all these kind of things, because yes, territory is a very big principle biblically. But I just think it's these tears, so we could lose. I mean, that's maybe what's going to happen in at the end of the Shemitah. Maybe New York City, the stock exchange, maybe we're going to lose 55% of our wealth. And actually, I think it'd be great. Whatever. To make us call upon the name of the Lord. But that doesn't mean that there won't be provision for us. That God, that's the tares. We're not the tares. See, this is the thing. We might come out from Babylon. Get your soul cleaned up. Stop living like the world. Stop thinking like the world. Stop trying to emulate the world. Stop, all this kind of stuff. And then you get into the whole Torah thing. Live righteously. It didn't. You don't have to be we can be sealed, and we're going to. You talk about who are the 144,000 during this time. I mean, there's a lot of other mysteries that are kind of like where we are, and we've been so focused on everything the devil's doing, which is necessary because it's been so cloaked for so long. But I think we're down to the wire, and I think that there is the prophecies about Israel, which is God's offspring on the planet, will be kind of reborn in a day. This group of people on the planet are going to be reanimated. The blinders are going to be taken off. We're going to see this thing in a whole clearer vision. And I think it's going to change our orientations and our politics and everything. And all I can say is when Yahushua really does come bodily, and, I think does the final blow to the Antichrist, to his armies and the Antichrist, the final blow that he'll never recover from, and then we really do begin to enter into a millennial rest.
Right. Let's get into some specifics on what you see as far as coming on the horizon, the connections to prophecy, because we're down almost to the final segment, and so
okay,
want to get into some specifics in that regard.
All right. If things happen this September, right? Nobody wants to be a date setter, but listen, we will know the season. I absolutely believe Jesus. So look at, listen, I'm just done with people playing stupid. We are in the season. Okay. So there's 4 seasons. And you doesn't take a rocket scientist. A child can tell the difference between a winter and a summer. So a true spirit-filled Christian who's got oil in their lamp should know this is the season. The question is the day or the hour. Jesus, and I think I agree with most people now as they're unpacking it. The day or the hour refers to the feast of Rosh Hashanah. It's a 3-day feast. It's a hidden feast. You don't know when it starts. You don't know the day or the hour. But we know the feast. And as we unpack the feast, like this, I think that's what you were doing. You were unpacking the feast to a large extent. These 3 feasts do represent the whole culmination and the whole harvest of the whole thing. And I think that's an understanding we all need to really be digging into and focusing on. I happen to believe there's no rapture, a secret catching away, none of this stuff. There's only, in all my Hebraic, there's only one thing. There's a resurrection rapture. I call it a resurrection rapture. So if you're dead, you're resurrected. If you're alive, you're changed. There's no other option. That's it. And that's for everybody. This is my opinion, the first resurrection. See, then what happened when Jesus, in my opinion, according to the Hebraic understanding, because it's all agricultural parabolic language, there is a spring harvest and there is a fall harvest. Jesus, the spring harvest, he took the souls that were in the pit up to heaven with him. When he went down to Hades and he opened it up and he took all the righteous that were there up to paradise. That was the first. That was the spring harvest. Now we're coming up on the fall harvest, and that's what now. And that is not only the fall harvest, but it's a harvest of the whole world. So that harvest will be the first resurrection. Those alive at that time, that's the whole big first resurrection. So those who come with the Lord are those that are already in paradise. They need a body. um, we have a body. We just need this body to be changed into the physics that Jesus had, that can live forever, that won't die, can walk through walls, stop a bullet, whatever, So when does that happen? That's the $1 million question.
Mm-hmm.
And it could happen technically, I mean, in my best case scenario, I'd love it to happen this Rosh Hashanah. That means it's a level playing field. That means when the abyss is opened, and I also believe this parabolically, because the sun and the moon and the stars that's not like the real sun we see up there. So those are talking about principalities. Those are going to fall. Everything that Satan has under the earth and in the heavens, all his hordes are going to come together, unfortunately, on our earth plane. And to me, Yahweh, come on, it's got to be a level playing field. That's why I think the Dead Sea Scrolls, if we're resurrected, raptured, but see, then there's a lot of other scripture verses you have to factor in. So it is very hard to figure out. I do admit that. But I just, maybe I'm too much of an optimist. Believe for the best, prepare for the worst.
Right. Nothing wrong
But
with that.
so we will have to see. But this is definitely a time to be prepared spiritually, to be watching on your guard. And I'm certainly not going to be watching TV on Rosh Hashanah. Let's put it that way. I mean, my gosh. So we will have to see. But I think America, I don't know if it's just the elect then. Then you get into this whole, we were talking about this. There are different players in this thing. The elect, are they different from, because you made a comment. There are three, you're in the four, what was the word? Before the foundations of the world, he knew us. You were the elect. You were one of the fall, or you were one of just sort of watching on the sidelines.
Right.
And that to me is being played out. See, so you're either one of the elect, you're one of the watchers, you're on that team, or you're just one of the harvest in the middle that is going to get harvested right now. Again, you're going to, you just can't be sitting on the fence forever.
Right. Yeah, because whereas we got new opportunity and, incarnating the flesh, then those that are lukewarm will be spewed out this time. So get off the fence, people. Absolutely.
Absolutely. This is not the time. So, and that explains the virgin that doesn't have oil. But if this is the last time, I did want to just touch on the Paul. I didn't know if you wanted to go there a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. But hold that thought because we're almost to third break. And before we get there, why don't you give out your contact information, your Facebook, YouTube again, real quick.
Okay.
Hold on. We'll pick it up on the other side, and you can do that, and then we'll go into wherever else you want to cover. All right. Okay. Be right back, everyone. All right. Welcome back, everybody, for our final segment. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Liz, and let you run with it. Before you go into whatever you want to talk about, do give out your contact information, Facebook, YouTube, all that.
Okay. Well, thank you, then. I have a YouTube channel. It's under my name, Liz McGee, and it's called Prophecy for the Last Hour. And I have, probably about 60, 70 YouTubes of, much of the information that we've all been talking about. But one thing I do say, I have a lot of this, and I just did a couple of videos. Now I'm really unpacking the two trees in the gardens, and especially sort of from the parabolic language point of view, because I did just, so that before I go into that, so that I have the YouTube channel. I'm a watercolor artist, and if people want to support my art, you can, I sell prints from my website or originals. It's www.lizbeth, my full first name, lizbethmcgee.com. And I have a Facebook page of Liz McGee Watercolors also. So, as I tell people, my day job, yes, I paint watercolors, but every other minute I'm into the text or into, um, all this great feast that is available for us today, seekers of truth. But have been starting to unpack what went on in the garden, because that's, again, you have to have that understanding to understand what's going on. In the two seed lines and how, but from more of the parabolic language of the two trees, the Nakash being a tree and Yahweh, Yahushua being a tree, because people are represented parabolically as trees, and forests are people groups or nations. So and then how it means like the cedars of Lebanon, or the oaks of Bashan. See, I'm pretty convinced at this point that the prophets spoke in a language that we are absolutely clueless to today. So much has been changed. So to understand how, because Jesus even said it, he said, I'm going to speak to them in parables, and they're not going to get it. It's going to be really just a nice moral story, which is a whole part of the Bible, which is nothing wrong with it. But we're talking about the hidden mysteries. That has always been couched parabolically, and that's what Jesus said. That's the keys of the kingdom that were stolen, that Jesus gave back, that we've lost again,
Right.
that I believe he is restoring. So that's kind of really my emphasis in a lot of where, so between Egypt and Babylon, between the body and the soul, how these words, these are concepts used to describe different parts of this thing, this battle we're in, and things that can be affected by it. So, yeah, Babylon's got to go bye-bye. It is one of the most insidious systems that, bar none, absolutely. But I did want to touch on one thing that in the writings of Abraham, again, that, and you mentioned it in one of your past shows just recently, this concept of the master Mahan, or what does it say? The master Mahan, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Which I did a lot of research on, and because I was trying to find out more information, because yeah, Master Mahan, first of all, that text Zen, I did a ton of, nobody can figure out where it came from.
Right.
It's the most mysterious text I've and this concept of the Master Mahan, the writings, they were originally kept taking me to Mormon texts, but it's not a Mormon text.
Right.
But then I started to read, somehow in all the research, I got connected to some of the Mormon texts and some of their discussions in their blogs, because the word Master Mahan is in their text. It is in the Book of Moses, and there's actually a lot of information about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started reading a little bit in the Book of Moses about the Master Mahan, because because I think this is the beginning of the whole secret society, Luciferian, the works of darkness that they do. It says, I came upon some of these blogs because actually it's a big discussion in LDS. Now again, LDS, whatever, but they have been infiltrated like everyone else. So there
Right.
is a dark side, but there is a lot of fascinating texts and bodies of work that,
And they hold some of the truths too, like they,
absolutely,
pre-existence, they affirm that, but again, they've been corrupted, the whole, as far as the polygamy and the pedophilia, sex and all of that, and also the writings of Abraham that we're talking about. There's a book of Abraham too that's an LDS text, and that's what a lot of people get confused
right,
with, as far as the writings of Abraham. And
right,
while you're talking, I'll post that link in the chat room for people.
right. So they're not the same thing, but we know where the book of Abraham from LDS did come from, supposedly some papyrus, Egyptian papyrus texts. Where the writings of Abraham came from, I don't, but we won't go down that rabbit trail. But what I wanted to say about a Master Mahan, in the Book of Moses, in the LDS, they have a lot of information about this Luciferian. Now they call him the Galatians or something. There's some other word that they use for this. But how Satan just constantly infiltrates. But there's a verse here in Book of Moses, I think it's chapter 5, verse 31, says, and Cain said, truly I am Mahan, the master of this great secret, that I may murder and get gain. Wherefore Cain was called Master Mahan, and he gloried in his wickedness. See, this is the definition of the secret. What one thing that really got me was the secret combination. He said he was a keeper of a secret, of the secret combination, and that word is always intrigued me, because combination, that's like a weird word. What does that have to do with murdering? You know, it don't. So, but a lot of people have unpacked it, that the word master is in different translations. This one guy unpacked it where it's the word great. So master comes from, means is coming from in the etymology, a word in Arabic that from the verb musteria, which is actually I think it's a Hebrew word, to hold a secret, to keep a secret. So he's a great secret keeper. Okay, the Hebrew word for keeping a secret is I think it's musterian in the Greek. Okay, but he goes into all these in Arabic, English, Greek, Sanskrit. They all have the M-A-H-A, maha, meaning great. So a great secret, and the secret is the secret combinations. Now, then this is a whole rabbit trail, but this is another whole time I'd like to unpack this with you into the hibernization. I think there's this information here, and that even the Watcher it carried on. These people have some information on hibernization that is way beyond. Am I making sense? There is something in the secret combinations, but this how they maintain a superiority over us is got to be in this secret combinations business. This is something that still has to be more unpacked. I will probably do some more teachings on it, but this, again, going back to the Nakash and Eve, and how Satan was able to infiltrate through the Nakash into her genetics, and it's just been a mess ever since. So I'm unpacking it parabolically, and until people really understand, again, I know, and even Christians out there, my brothers and sisters, this is probably the last hiding place that Satan has, and I know Christians fight against this tooth and nail, and some of the most people I respect immensely, who are doing great works for God out there, fight against it and fight against you. It's got to stop, because this understanding has just got to come front and center, because we will never really understand the war we're in until we understand. This is, to me, in the mark of the beast. That's a genetic marker. Now, I know the beast, we know that he has a political and economic bondage, that he can put us into everything. I mean, religious bondage and economic and health. There's no nothing they have not infiltrated. But taking all the onion layers away, I do believe the mark of the beast finally comes down to a genetic marker of who's your daddy. So that's kind of the way I read that. And people are just gonna, that's why it's the new birth to me, is I just, it's free. You can get Yahweh's genetics for free. I don't understand people, you know, but that's a whole interesting, and I know, I don't think you've read too much. I've never heard you speak too much into the Mormon texts.
Well, I have covered quite a few of them. But yeah, no, it's not something that I've talked a lot on. But I want to make a comment real quick. Since you made mention of that you thought the mark of the beast was a genetic marker, it's interesting to me that in my study of these two different bloodlines, these seed lines, there was an individual, and I'm not going to mention his name, but his a doctor, and he's been anonymous, but he's been talking about how the elites believe that they have three-strand DNA,
Right.
and that their genetics are different, and that they believe, that their mother is Eve, but that their father was not Adam, but was in fact the Nakash, the serpent of Genesis chapter 3. So that whole study, which is part of my second edition of my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. It's fascinating um, um, document to read up on and to understand its connections with this. And so perhaps the mark of the beast is this three-strand DNA, this parasitic that mimics a third strand DNA, that, you know, there is some
Right.
anomaly to the genetics which defines them as the children of Satan and not the children of Yahweh. All right, but
It's
go
true.
ahead.
I do see everything on a genetic level, because also when it talks about, Daniel talks about iron and clay, when you
Right,
unpack that symbolically, clay represents Adamic. We are made of the dust, the
right.
clay. Iron, according to Hebrew, is a word sididios, I think is. It's oh, and I wish I had my notes in front of me. It's like a sulfur. It's like a brimstone. It's like a nakash. And actually, in slang, they call it iron, or they call it in slang the droppings of the serpent.
Oh,
So
wow.
iron totally represents nakash genetics. So it's a mingling. This is of Nakash, and Adamic genetics. That's what the mingling of the iron and clays. And then, but see, then this is gets, oh, but this is another whole, I tried to talk about this one time. The whole, what gold, this is alchemy. There's so much under the radar of mixing, of secret combinations.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is, and I don't know if we'll unpack it all before the Lord comes back, whatever, but I really believe that. So this is why, again, the new birth, I would say to anybody, you know, and you listen to it, I don't know, I don't understand. We have a Father who is just loves us and will give us eternal genetics, and for free, for just acknowledging him as our Yahweh Father and repenting of our waywardness. I mean, it's just so beautiful. So I just encourage anyone to check into this and to understand the magnitude. Your body, your soul, and your spirit has been infiltrated by parasitic archons that just are virusing up everything. I do think computer terminology, you know, is some of the best
Right.
parabolic language we could have today. I mean, the viruses, just whatever it is just the whole world's running rampant with computer viruses in our bodies, our souls, and our spirits. It's crazy.
I
But
like the word in the Book of Giants, miscegenation, which speaks about the corruption of the DNA, the genome.
yeah,
Also, I want to address one comment in the chat room and then give you a chance to comment on this as well. Skyzilla had asked about how does a God of love contain wrath? And this goes, you know, same thing with any parent that has raised a child, especially if you have a child that somehow gets involved in, like, say, shooting up heroin and runs wayward and goes crazy and then starts to empty your bank accounts and, you know, steals your car. And it's not that you hate your child, because you absolutely love them, but you are angered at what they've done and you want them to change their ways. And so it's, you know, the prodigal son. It's the same thing with God, especially with um, the children of Cain and those that are not his and that murder his children. If you had a child that was murdered by someone, you know, in some way, like say ISIS beheaded them or something, you would you would have wrath, and it's the same kind of deal. Let me get you to answer this, Liz, and then continue with what you were talking
well,
about.
I agree. I mean, people don't volition. Every created thing that is a living has volition. So the angels, everyone in this game, no one's a machine.
Right.
Everyone has volition. So you can choose. This is the whole
Yes.
point. You can choose righteousness, or you can choose Cain. I look at, he had a 50-50 chance. He had 50% of Eve's, uh
Right.
genes, and 50% of Cain's, and God said, you could have asked me for help. I would have helped you
Mm,
overcome, the evil inclination. But he didn't.
yes.
He listened to his father. So I understand, but the other thing in this, God is, we have to understand this from God's point of view, and they always say this. That's why it says that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy of credit. It is a 6,000 year thing. This is not going on forever. People better understand. We are there. This is the wrap-up season. It's going to be fast. It's going to be swift. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be glorious. It's going to be amazing. But this is it. It's not going on forever. So people better just really start choosing their daddy. There's just no getting around it. But back to Paul, I wanted to get in one last, because that was one of the other topics you mentioned, because but the parable, and this is how you mentioned the parable of the prodigal son from a Hebraic point of view, and I said this in the last show we did, from a Hebrew's, that's the story is the story of Judah and Israel, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The older brother is Judah, who has always stayed loyal to the father, and then the prodigal is us, or Gentile, Christian, or whatever, whoever who went out and just lived riotously. And so we have come back, but the coming back is of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's their overarching parable for what has been going on. But I want to say with Paul, people have to understand who Gentiles are, and I guess this is the next thing that has to really be unpacked then, is the names, because it's all over the Bible. Who the cattle, the behemoth, the rams, the creeping things, the birds, the Hebrew words, the omphs, and the nakash, who is the tannin. It's a word. The serpent, the dragon. These are all players in the parabolic language. And then you have the Adam. I didn't want to say this last thing about RH negative blood. I have to throw this out then, because my personal opinion on that is, I think that's Adamic. That it would have to be Noah, Shem, Adamic bloodline. That's all that's left. Everything else, that's what I think. Okay, but we won't even go there.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. You're
That's
talk about whatever you want to. You've got about 5, maybe 4 minutes later.
Right. Okay. So the thing with Paul, if you cannot understand who the people groups are, but Paul went to the Gentiles, the 12. If you study this out historically, we know that the Essenes were in my opinion, the bulk of the earliest church. James the Just, heading of the Jerusalem church. See, because I have to look at this thing in its historic context. It was like a flower unfolding. It just didn't all happen at once. And people, they were people just like us, trying to grasp the magnitude of the prophecies that are happening in their generations, just like us. We're trying to desperately figure this out. They were trying to figure it out. But, so the Essenes, but then it morphed very quickly. But the 12 apostles, you see, Paul was not born in Israel. He was born in Tarsus. He was a Roman Jew. The dispersion at the time, geographically, probably for about 500 miles all around Jerusalem, you had conclaves or communities of Jews, in even 10 tribe Jews that were still trying to live Torah and would go to the festivals and try to stay connected to Jerusalem. And those are scattered. They would be called the diaspora, the scattered house of Israel and the house of Judah. And they were known. I mean, these pockets of people were known. So when the 12 apostles went out to preach, they went into the known areas. See, they were sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. They went to these pockets as far away as India, down into Africa. We know they went to Egypt, and up as far as Ephesus and all around. But Paul, what started to happen after about 20 years, especially with the baptism of the Holy Spirit and things, they began to see that God was pouring out this grace and this new birth on, quote unquote, the Gentiles. And this is a whole revelation. And this is what began the great divide, so to speak, between the house, or the Jews today and the Christian today, why we don't understand what's going on. Because what Paul saw, and by revelation, and he said, I see a mystery, how God had, now he began to see how it was going to play, that the seed had gone out into the Gentiles, into whole places where they lost their identity, and by going after them and preaching the gospel farther and farther out to the othermost parts, he could bring in all the Gentiles. Does that make sense? See, people understand, but Paul, he wasn't a false apostle. But the thing is, there's a statement that says that every man is supposed to remain in the calling wherewith he's been called. If you were not called or when you heard this gospel as a Jew, a circumcised Jew, if you were called as a circumcised Jew, you could still practice your messianic Nazarene Judaism in that context. But if you were called as a Gentile, you didn't have to pray. This was the whole point. Jesus put an end to offering and sacrifice. And now that's how I read that verse in Daniel. He's the sacrificial lamb. It's done. There is no more temple, no more need for a temple service of a Jerusalem city to go to for offerings and sacrifice. Boom, it's done. The lamb was sacrificed. So as Paul is going out preaching to this people, understanding we got 2 more days, this gospel's got to go out like ripples in a wave, out and out and out and out to the farthest most ends of the earth. These in Jerusalem, and the other thing is, they were told prophetically that Jerusalem was going to get razed and to get out of town, and they did. The most closely listening remnants got out of Jerusalem and were not there during the sacking. But then we know the house of Judah stayed loyal to their, we're under blindness. Okay, but here's Paul going out to the Gentiles. I believe that the council of the Jerusalem council, where now Paul is preaching and God is pouring out his spirit, and it's evident to everyone that God's not being a respecter of persons in this thing. What are they going to do? They know the temple is going to be raised. They know prophetically what's going to go on. What do we tell these people? And I believe this is where you get the Didache, and I believe this is where you get this concept where people are stay where they're called. So if you weren't called circumcised, you don't have to get circumcised. If you weren't called as a Jew,